In Valorant specifically, the idea of rounding a corner and instantly dying as a new player, that's kind of integral to the game, being able to get those quick headshots. But it doesn't sustain their community. I think a way to improve that would be more the approach that Overwatch takes, where any one character, unless you get like headshotted by a sniper class specifically, it takes multiple shots to kill you.
How do you do it again?
Isn't it? Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the Games with Style podcast, where once ever we record just a podcast about video game development. I'm your host, Ethan Edgington, and I'm joined by the one and only Christopher. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, today, something I've been really interested about game design as of recently is team synergy inside of games. Anytime you get on multiplayer, you're going to see in the chat there's going to be toxic players, lots of slurs and just name calling and whatnot. And so we're just going to talk about how games developers can incorporate good team play into their games and kind of what qualities get that kind of that fan base, that toxic fan base, or a good one conversely. So just out of curiosity, what's been your experience with toxic video games before?
I think that my experience is more negative than positive. It's probably a question of culture that you find in video games. And I sure do find a lot of mean people and people that will work against you and compete against your own team, right?
Yeah.
So I have mostly a bad experience with most games, but there are a few exceptions. And I think that this is more of like a cultural issue that we have more than maybe the games by themselves. What do you think? Is it a cultural thing, or is it something that's made by design?
Yeah, so I get that. It's like, you come home from a long day of work and you get on a game and, someone 360 no-scopes you and you just had a bad day. I can definitely see outside factors playing a role in that type of toxicity. But then, so I wonder, let's look at games where that doesn't happen, because there's definitely some really good instances of where you just go and you have fun with your friends. Off the top of my head, I think a prime candidate would be the game Deep Rock Galactic. I don't think you're too familiar with that game.
I've never heard about it. So
right.
What is it?
So I'll explain. Essentially, you can have teams of up to 4. Your team generally does better the more players you have on your team. And everyone works together as dwarves inside a mine.
What are dwarves?
Dwarves.
Dwarves.
Like small pickaxe wielding people. Yeah. So everyone's a dwarf, and you go mine. There's usually like 2 objectives you have to complete per assignment. And then, you complete your objectives and you usually, you mine something, you find fossils, you connect a pipe underground or something, and then just everyone works together as different classes to accomplish that. The catch is, obviously, there's monsters who are trying to kill you. So everyone has to work together not only to mine things out and use their classes to synergize with each other, but they also have to protect each other as well.
So in essence, it's like a cooperative survival game where you are stranded, or maybe you're willingly going into something that is very dangerous.
Yeah, so you work for a mining company as dwarves. Okay. And then your objective is to complete 2 tasks and then get out alive. The game ends if all players have died at the same time, but if a teammate has died, you can go and resurrect them. And
what is the ultimate goal of this game?
The ultimate goal is to complete your 2 objectives, and as long as one person's alive, get back to your ship and then go back to the surface.
And what is your experience with the team play? Is there a voice chat? Is there like a text chat for people to communicate?
I think text chat is most prominent. They do have a very handy multi-tool option where you literally just point at some sort of object, and usually just in-game a voice quip will say whatever's going on. So if you spot an ore that's in a hard-to-reach area, you can just kind of ping it, and then your character will say, hey, There's, I don't know, some sort of orb over there that we need to get. What's interesting about that is there's 4 different classes that each have very unique abilities. So there's a gunner whose main job is to shoot down bad guys. Big like machine gun, he can put up shields and zip lines as well for movement. Engineers can create turrets for broader space. A scout can use a grappling hook and usually has like longer range assault rifles. And then the last one's a driller, which can just cut through any type of rock. Like
And
it's
these
nothing.
classes or categories, they complement each other, right?
Yes, exactly. So you can have as many, as far as I understand, you can have as many of classes as you want. So you can have 4 gunners and just go in guns blazing if you want to. If that's how you want to play, you can. But what's really nice is, for instance, the scout has a grappling hook. If there's an ore up at the top of a cave, he can grapple up to that ore, but then as soon as he lets go of his grapple, he'll fall. The engineer, though, has a platform gun. So the scout can grapple up to like the ceiling, and then the engineer can shoot a platform right underneath his feet. And so he just lets go and he mines it straight there.
So is the gameplay part of what makes the synergy in this, or is it more a community thing? Is it designed, to force people to help each other, to cooperate, to work towards one thing, instead of just people actually just being rude and trying to get the most orbs by themselves, for example?
Exactly. And that's a good point. All of the treasure at the end of the game is shared between everybody. So no one's there to try to get steal the gold from the other people. I know like in a lot of games, like take Minecraft, for example, if you're the first one in your multiplayer world to find diamonds, you probably don't want to tell everybody. You want to use those for yourself. In this game, if you find gold, if you find the objective, it helps you and your entire team to work together with them. You don't want to hide things. You want to work together to get that done as efficiently as possible. The longer you wait out, usually the more monsters come. And so you want to work together to use that efficiently.
Yeah, use your time in an efficient manner, and you gotta work together to actually do something or achieve what everybody wants, which is to probably get the rewards, which was what, gold or money?
Gold is usually not an objective, but it's used for like customization purposes. I forget the exact material types you need to collect, but like fossils might be one of them, or connecting a pipe just from underground machine for the company you work for. One thing that I notice about the game is that, oh, that's fine. One thing I notice about the game that I wonder if it has a play subconsciously is that because everyone plays as dwarves, obviously, like you've got the dwarf aesthetic where everyone's just kind of underground. Nobody's like necessarily cooler than anyone else. There's not much prestige as far as like appearances goes. Naturally, there are talented players who have been playing for a really long time and are really skilled, and they have a much more powerful character.
But it's not visible, right?
Not exactly visible. Of course, there's customizations, but like there's not really attractive dwarves in the game.
There's not like a skin that's like made out of platinum and diamonds.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Because I know there's a lot of envy in a way in a lot of other games with like skins that you can buy with outside currency. Is like, yes, you can customize your character, but at the end of the day, everyone's just a bunch of dwarves underground that need to work together. And I think just subconsciously, there's something kind of humbling about that. Like everyone's really short. You can't even crouch in the game because you're already so small. You can buy each other beers and get drunk in the game.
I love that.
Yeah. And then just for no purpose whatsoever, you just raise your pickaxe in the air and shout, "Rock and Stone." And just everyone spams the button because it's just a good time.
Oh, man, I love that community aspect that sort of action brings to the table. Even if it's like silly stuff that's just, drinking a beer that's not really going to do anything, or doing the whole emote thing that are interactive with each other. I think that also brings out, some fun interaction between people. And that might also be one of the things that brings the synergy to a video game, that it is partially designed to, be just a social thing where, you want people to interact for the sake of interacting, doing fun stuff. And then, of course, the main thing is playing the video game, which is already a synergized thing in itself.
Yeah. And I think that's really the appeal of the game, is to play it with friends, especially. I tried single player once. You get like a companion robot that is helpful, but at the end of the day, when you've got a friend to shoot down the monsters with you, it's just infinitely more helpful. So in that regard, the game is most fun played working together with teams. Have you ever had an experience with a game where synergy is also encouraged?
Oh yes, certainly. One of the video games that I've played a lot over the past few years is a game called Dead by Daylight. And it's this multiplayer horror game where 4 people are put into these horrific sceneries that have certain objectives that you have to do. And inside this map, there are also monsters or characters that want to kill you. And there's always one. So it's almost like a team-like game where there's 4 survivors versus 1 killer. And it forces you to cooperate to actually get out of the whole game, because you can't do a one-on-one versus the killer, because it's balanced in such a way that the killer will eventually get you if you're alone. But if you're 4 people, you can somehow make priorities and trade and be smart about how you're deceiving the monster or tricking it, or spending his time just chasing him around. And so team play is so infused in the whole game that you don't escape it.
That's interesting. And so I would assume then it's basically not possible for one survivor to just completely outplay the monster.
In most cases, no. It would be completely impossible if the killer is, an experienced individual that has probably played a few hours, Even the most proficient players will struggle by themselves. And when you have 4, even then, it's typical that they still lose, or some of them lose, because you can still win if some get out. So sometimes it's worth letting a guy go, but that excludes the winning potential of your win.
Right.
If you win.
And I'm glad you bring that up, because I think the idea of one player, one skilled player being able to outperform everyone else is kind of a key factor I see in bad game design with bad synergy. I'd take, for example, the game Valorant. In that game, if you've got one of the more expensive assault rifles, one headshot, you're instantly dead, which means that any new player can round a corner and immediately they're dead, and they don't respawn until the next round. That's a 5v5 multiplayer team attack game where you have to plant a bomb and then defend it until it explodes. And then the opposing team has to prevent you from planting that bomb. So in that case, any type of new player who maybe can't hit headshots in 0.5 milliseconds,
it can be brutal.
They're immediately going to die, and they're going to have a bad time playing the game with their friends who have played the game longer than them. But then their friends are also encouraged to not play with that friend because they don't have that experience yet. And so, like in a game like Dead by Daylight, what I'm hearing is that it kind of prevents even the most skilled player from outsmarting the opponent on their own.
Yes, exactly. So you can have like a new player, and he will still be a greater asset if he's alive than dead. So if he's on the brink of dying, you still want to save him. It might be worth it. Even if he's just being chased the whole time, that's going to buy you time to do your objectives. So the fewer you are, the more you're punished and the harder it gets. So it's all about keep as many people alive and waste as much time as possible for the killer, so that you can have time to complete everything and open the gates and get out. And that's one of the things that I think makes this game so popular. It is, I don't remember where it stands on the charts from the top of my head, but it's in the most popular horror games currently.
Yeah.
Simply because, 1, it is a horror game that is scary, and 2, it has this incredible synergy with a team that very few other games can bring people. And I think a lot of people yearn for this synergy that they get the taste of once in a while, but they don't get it consistently.
Yeah.
But in Dead by Daylight, And in your game, Deep Rock Galactic,
Yeah.
it's part of the game, so you don't have to go looking for it or play enough games to just stumble upon it by chance, right?
Right.
You will encounter it no matter what.
That's good. And I mean, as long as we're on the topic of synergy, there's an obvious game that we really have to bring up, and that would be League of Legends. I mean,
Yes.
it's notorious for having the most toxic fan base like of all time. I've heard like unless the bottom 10% of players have no idea what they're doing, and then the other 90% of players basically want to be professional. Like they've been playing for years and years. And so like once you get out of that initial lobby, just like there's no playing the game. You're instantly dying.
Yeah.
You have to be either perfect at that game or you have to go home. So I don't personally play League of Legends for that reason because I don't want to waste my time, in a toxic game. But like there's so much potential because obviously it's a popular game.
Oh, certainly.
Absolutely. I mean like what is made by Riot Games, they're really good. Same as Valorant. Riot's really good at making technical games, almost like chess in a way. Like chess in video game form where you have to think steps ahead and then
It's extremely strategic, and all the things that you do affect everything else you do afterwards. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to plan ahead, just like chess, right? You have to move pieces in a certain sequence for it to play in your favor towards the end and potentially win, right?
Right. Well, and there's so many ways you can add on top of that because chess is one player versus another. With like League of Legends or Valorant, you've got 5 people on a team that can combine all of their talents and their abilities together to like build on top of that with that added complexity. So I wonder then, just like what might be some examples of how such a game could be fixed. I think in Valorant specifically, the idea of rounding a corner and instantly dying as a new player, that's kind of integral to the game, being able to get those quick headshots. But it doesn't sustain their community. I think a way to improve that would be more the approach that Overwatch takes, where any one character, unless you get like headshotted by a sniper class specifically, it takes multiple shots to kill you. And so even a new player can pick a tank character where, yes, they're allowed to take a couple hits before they die, and even the strongest snipers can't immediately destroy them. I think that sort of approach, added with the ability tactics that Valorant has, just kind of makes it a little more user-friendly and a bit more fun.
Yeah, the punishment in Valorant is very unforgiving at times. Same with League of Legends. If they're better than you, they will destroy you, right? You don't stand a chance. You cannot run away. You cannot use anything to like save yourself, essentially. While in Overwatch, you have classes that can jump extremely far and take a few hits before they actually fall. You have healers that can save you from potentially disastrous situations. And you got shields and everything, right? So people can save each other and people can save themselves. So it is almost a feature that Valorant lacks. It's very unforgiving compared to synergized games.
And that's good too. I'm glad you bring up healers because there's a stark contrast between Overwatch and Valorant in that Valorant has a couple of characters who can heal either themselves or their teammates, but for a lot of lobbies, like there's no heals whatsoever. Maybe you can find like a health pack on the floor, but once you've taken damage, like you sustain that energy until the round is over. With a game like Overwatch, there's not really rounds. It's just one match and the game is over.
Yeah, it's all continuous one thread, right?
Yeah. But in Overwatch, similarly, there's an entire section of characters designed for healing capabilities. And usually those characters are a bit less popular because they don't get as much prestige. But they're just as necessary and valuable that as soon as an assault character or even a tank is going out and taking all those shots, they shout to their teammate, hey, like, man, I need your help. I need those heals. Like, I need you to be there with me. And then when they get those heals, they're like, man, our heals did a great job.
When you look at the professional level of Overwatch, you see that almost all of them have healers. And I think that is because it unlocks a new potential for their team that is not possible if you only go with the non-healing roles. So it's also by design that they want you to actually use this because it is beneficial and because it creates a synergy. Because healing each other is a very cooperative action. And you want to go to your healer wants to follow you, and you want to keep your healer alive, right? And likewise, you know. So this little small detail, that there's an incentive to actually help each other, is very beneficial for people who actually enjoy a game, especially those that are less skilled in playing with random people. That can often be both intimidating and difficult.
Yeah.
You meet people of all sorts of levels, people that can be extremely insulting, people that can be incredibly kind. But typically, you end up on the lower skill side when you start out and meet a lot of mean people. And games just lose their player base based on who is playing it.
Yeah, that's really good. And obviously, I wouldn't say Overwatch is, you know, just a stellar game as far as non-toxic communities go. Because one thing I notice is that anytime you get prestige involved, that's when the toxicity increases tenfold. Anytime you play ranked, it's automatically like 10 times more competitive, 10 times more toxic. Usually, even if you're playing with friends, somebody's probably going to get mad at the first or second loss. And so I wonder, let's bring that to more casual games then. Because I would consider Deep Rock Galactic to be sort of in the middle between casual. It's more on the casual side, but there's still some intensity there. But maybe more like the type of game you'd play on a couch with some friends in the same room. Like Mario Kart, for instance.
That would be a great one.
Because in Mario Kart, like the more people you have playing, the more fun it is.
I remember in elementary school, we would all come together at the end of the day, and we would just bring our DSs and play Mario Kart together. And that was one of the best memories that I ever had. Because one, you got to play this game that you already liked, and second, you got to actually compete with your friends. And everybody was almost on the same level, because the items that you get and the boosts and all that, they bring you closer to each other.
Yeah.
You know, when you get the blue shell, you know, no matter how good you are, you're not getting away. So you might end up dead last, even though you were the best, you know, at racing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some humility in Mario Kart. From I think some of the statistics I've heard, Mario Kart is like, I think it's like the 5th most intense games.
Oh, yeah.
Like of all times. Because at all times, if you're winning, there's a blue shell coming for you. And like you're going to die.
Should I stay in second place for now just to survive a little longer?
Yeah. Especially with like really good players. I don't know if you've seen like professional Mario Kart players, but usually 12th place and 1st place are like one item away from each other.
Yeah.
Like it's not.
It doesn't take much to change the entire scoreboard.
Yeah, it's insane. And so like I think that's interesting because Mario Kart still has a lot of rage. Like, you know, you're in first, you get blue shelled. You know, you end up making like 5th or something because a bunch of people pass you, and it's like, well, that's not fair. Like, I was the most skilled person. So I would wonder, what are your thoughts on like kind of unfair randomness in those team games?
Well, I think there is a complementary aspect to the casual side of the game. It's not meant to be this competitive, objective sport. It's supposed to be something that is fun, something that you cannot always predict. Because if you can start predicting in the game, you know what items people are going to get. You know if you're going to make it. There's that certain thing that when you're not certain that you're going to win despite your skill, it adds this adrenaline, like, oh my God, I got to be really careful, even though I'm like miles ahead of other people. I got to be careful. And even if you're dead last, maybe the worst player, right? You know that a few events in the game could lead you to be second or first place.
Yeah.
And this surprising gameplay, I think, is what makes this such a fun social game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really hard to deny just how fun Mario Kart is to play.
Yeah.
I don't think I've met a single person who like hates the game.
It's an amazing game.
Yeah.
Everybody that I've met loves Mario Kart. whoever you talk to, any demographic from any country, if you mention Mario Kart and they've played it, it's like, yeah, that's a good game, no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like, kind of trying to find like the like a faultless game where just like players effortlessly build on top of each other. I'd say maybe a good example, a good simple example would just be like Super Mario Brothers. Like you can play just as Mario and get through the level to the end. I have such strong childhood memories playing that game with my dad that he and I we'd go find all the star coins in Super Mario Brothers. We'd find all the star coins, we'd find all the hidden underground areas that are kind of secret or whatever. And then we'd find like infinite one-up glitches. So like because I play with my dad, you can like jump off your teammate's head onto a turtle shell, bounce off a bunch of bullets in like the third world, and then you just keep jumping from one to another. And you just keep each other going and then
I bet the developers didn't expect that.
Absolutely. Yeah. But it was just so fun, and like I honestly think that's part of what got me into gaming was just like that bonding with my dad that I had as a child, just because it was better together. And I think that's kind of the key takeaway with multiplayer games in particular, is that if you've got multiplayer games, even if you're against that person, like in Mario Kart, where you're trying to beat the other person, the game should promote like the more the merrier. Having more players should make it more fun, just because there's actual real people there.
And it opens these opportunities. It makes it more exciting. When you compete one-on-one, there's appropriate games for one-on-one, but the more people you can bring to have this fun, it just unlocks a whole new arena that you typically cannot get anywhere else. You cannot, race in the real world like you do in Mario. You cannot play a level like in Super Mario Bros.
Yeah.
It's simply not possible. And when you open these opportunities, like jumping on top of each other, shelling your very best friend and he spins around full of ink, it just puts a smile on your face like nothing else can. And a lot of people certainly have these fond memories with their friends and family that are simply brought to life by these games.
For sure. Well, I think that's going to wrap up all the time we have for today. Dude, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Of course. For all of you game developers out there, just want to encourage you guys, if you're considering implementing multiplayer games, just think about how people interact with each other in that game, and go out and make games that support team play and not toxicity. You guys have a great week. See you never.
Goodbye.